Hello, everybody, and I'd like to welcome you to the Staffing Matters and Urgency Committee today. As the agenda says, in view of the circumstances around the COVID pandemic, this meeting is being held remotely, but any decisions from this meeting will form recommendations that will go to the Chief Operating Officer. Before I start going through the agenda items, I'd just like to note here that because of that, item 6, which is the local government pension scheme discretions policy summary, is going to be deferred to enable councillors to make a decision on that in person, and that will be deferred to our February Staffing Matters and Urgency Committee. With that, we'll go to agenda item 1, declarations of interest. So I'll just give a couple of seconds in case any colleagues wish to declare any additional interests, but I can't see any being declared, so thank you for that. It then takes us through to the exclusion of the press and the public. I'd like you to consider excluding the press and the public in relation to the annexes of agenda items 9 and 10, on the grounds that they contain information relating to individuals and the financial affairs of particular persons. So the suggestion is that if this is agreed, when we get to agenda items 9 and 10 at the end of the agenda, at that point, we would drop into private session. Are we happy?
Chair, my apologies there. I clicked on a button which accidentally forced you into breakout rooms. My apologies. If you
We're all back, and at least everybody can see the test that it's live. I suddenly found myself in a room with councillors De Gorn and Hook,
my apologies.
Looking as perplexed as I did. But I think I was just saying that if we can agree that exclusion of the press and the public, when we get to agenda items 9 and 10, that will come into force. So if I could see that colleagues were happy with a nod, or thank you very much with that recommendation. That then takes us through to agenda item 3, which is the minutes. And these are set out on pages 1 to 4. And again, I'll just give a couple of seconds in case colleagues have any issues or matters arising from the minutes. If not, if I could please see if those are happy to accept the minutes from the last meeting. Again, a nod or a show of hands. Thank you very much. So it's a clear consensus in favour of accepting the minutes. Item 4 is public participation. We don't have any members of the public with us at this meeting. So that means we'll move straight on to agenda item 5, which is the workforce profile. And this starts on page 5. And I can see that we're joined by both Ian and Helen, and I'll hand over to Ian to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So in front of you, you've got an update on City of York Council's workforce at the end of Q2, so the end of September. And I think I'll just take us through a couple of the key patterns, if that's okay. So you'll see at the start of the document, there's a small reduction in City of York Council's headcount, and you'll also see that within our number of full-time equivalents. So we're about 50 or so less. You'll see as an organisation that our average sickness is up compared to where we were at this point last year, but that's only a small increase, and we're likely to see a slightly larger increase in Q3. You can see that within the document, we provide all the details at a directorate level. And so there are a few sickness challenges in place, which I know are being closely monitored in order to tackle issues there. You'll see within the tables 1.4 and 1.5 that there's a slight increase in the numbers of starters and leavers in the organisation compared to other years. And I think this is a pattern that's being seen across the public sector with a slightly higher turnover of staff. And you'll see that through to the turnover figures. In terms of the reasons for people leaving, actually that hasn't really changed within the organisation. You'll see there that there's slightly more people resigning, but that's actually realistically because we've masked the figures where people have tupied out in large numbers in previous years. So actually the reasons for leaving are very much the same. Moving on to table 1.10, so the total assignments for working with York, you'll see there that it looks like a bit of a decrease, but it's not really a like-for-like comparison. I think it's probably worth mentioning at this point last year, we had around about 600 people with working with York year to date. We've got 700 this year. But once again, we actually have quite a lot of people here for COVID, for running people like the test centres, which accounts for almost 200 assignments throughout the year at different points. So actually the numbers of working with York are reducing. And in table 1.11, that's our long-term assignments. So that's something we said as an organisation we'd like to look into reducing, and you can see that has come down from last year. And some of the ones that are left, around about 70 of those people are because we've chosen the business model around working with York. Moving on to the equalities data, even though we've had quite a few starters and leavers within the organisation, there's not a great change in our equalities profile. So there's still some bits in there to work at as an organisation. But there's an overall summary of our current position. Okay.
Thank you very much. Helen, anything you'd like to add at this stage?
No, to be quite honest, Ian's run through the main headlines there, which I'm quite happy with. I'm just happy to take any questions on that. And in reviewing these figures, a lot of these, certainly the equalities profiling and things will come out as part of the OD plan, which will come to SMU at a later date. So yes, there's a lot, and obviously we still are under the recovery plan with pandemic. We didn't expect to be in this position, so our longer term assignments, etc., certainly in some areas are continuing, but we're hoping to get some of those costs and those figures down.
Thank you very much. So I'll open the item for any questions or comments. Councillor Hook.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a couple of very small ones. The first one, so that's in table 110, the 199 and then 212 people working for public health, that's all in testing then, I presume?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, because that special COVID stuff.
Yeah, there might be a couple of people who aren't, but the absolute majority are working at the testing sites, and they're also the arrangements that we've come up with partners in order to spend the COVID grant on those sites.
So that's okay. And the other one was in 2.3, the age one, and you just noticed that there's such a large amount of people in the 50 to 64 bracket. I just wondered if that's sort of a time bomb waiting to go off when they all reach retirement age, or just any comments on that?
So there will be a challenge at the organisation. I mean, we do monitor the average age of our workforce, and it's stayed pretty stable actually, which is in about the late 40s or so as an average age. But yes, I think it will be a challenge to keep retaining their skills as an organisation. I don't think it's so much a ticking time bomb, because obviously the organisation has a number of programmes to bring people in, such as apprenticeships within the council plan. And I think we'll see in some Q3 figures that will go out for the monitor executive in a couple of weeks. The organisation continues to bring people in on apprenticeships, so hopefully that cycle on the workforce remains. Okay.
There's also, just to add to that, there's a lot of succession planning that we're actually looking to do. I've actually got HR staff going to be looking at the LGA framework for succession planning and talent management, which looks at age amongst one of them, but that is one of our areas, certainly within the place department, that we do need to look at, because we've got some single point roles where we've got single point of expertise that we need to look at in terms of age, and there's some strategies we can look at around that, which I'm looking at, so can follow that up.
Thank you. Councillor Kilbane.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions. Should do them one at a time, or?
However, yep.
Okay. Just for the average sickness days, table 1.3, I'm assuming that we're still going to be higher than the average for all public sector. I know that the Q2 figures aren't available in the report. We do seem to struggle to reduce the number of average sickness days, and I wondered, is there any correlation, given that we improved hugely in 2021, between working from home and a reduction in the number of sick days that staff are taking?
Helen or Ian, or both?
Drawing a correlation between those two things may be a bit tricky. Your first question, how close are we to the public sector benchmarks? You'll see in the table actually that as an organisation we've become much closer to them. Now, I think I said at a few meetings over the last couple of years that there is no real reported figure into government for public sector sickness information. So the way that we pull this one together is by speaking to lots of authorities that are in our comparator group. I'd hope we'll get a figure out of those comparator authorities, but I wouldn't expect it to turn up, Councillor Kilbane, for 3-6 more months. As soon as it does, I'll make sure it's available. And I think that will be what's key to us, isn't it? That we are back closer to the average within the other local authorities, which is a goal that we set ourselves. And I think we were almost there. 0.4 of a working day, I don't think is a great stretch actually away from where we would like to be. Okay.
Helen.
Nothing further to add on that, to be honest. Experience with my other council, these things do fluctuate, and obviously our main important thing is about looking after our employees who are genuinely poorly, but also making sure that they're resilient, etc. So we're putting in processes in place for that. But that is one to watch in terms of the benchmark. And like Ian said, one of the aspects is looking at our neighbours, but all of our neighbours, we don't measure sickness on a like-for-like basis either. So it is quite a difficult process. But yes, we've just got to try and make sure that we're managing effectively, and I'm confident that that's happening in the HR teams and with managers supporting, HR supporting managers to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Kilbane.
Okay, thanks. But we can't really say whether or not the number of sick days reduced because people were working from home. It's too difficult to draw any sort of comparators.
I mean, in the main, I think we haven't really seen sickness change by location. I mean, we've had a look at sickness in different working spaces, whether or not that be the depot or sites or West offices. And actually the pattern's been pretty similar across all of them in terms of either the reduction that came down in 2020-21 and then the slight upturn that we've seen this year and that we're likely to see in Q3. So no, I'm not sure we can draw an easy conclusion there, but it is something I think we could look into in a bit more detail if we felt it was worth a study. Okay.
Okay, thanks. And on table 1.6, the 72% resignations for Q2. Do we know what is that resignation with no reason? Is that why it's in the table there? Do we know why, nearly 3/4 of our staff resigned?
So I guess there's a couple of bits in there. One is, do we classify all of the resignations? We don't do that very well, okay? When they're absolutely specific reasons, then we would put them into the tables there, okay? Because it's something that we would return to central government. On, do we know why people resign from the organisation? I mean, yes, from the work that I can see in the organisation, the exit interview process is still strong within management groups, and the feedback from that exit interview process back into wider management teams at a directorate level still looks like it's a robust process within the authority. So I think that opportunity to understand why people are leaving us is still there, and I'm relatively confident that we probably learn from that as we go along. Okay.
Sorry, so what I meant, 3/4 of the people who have resigned, there's no sort of ascribed reason given in this report, though. So
they might go into a variety of reasons there. It's because they haven't come in for that one of those 4 specific reasons. So I guess when a lot of people leave employment, it isn't just for that one thing. It could come through as a multiple things, which is why you've got 72% in there. Okay, the figure of 72%, I don't feel is much higher than any of the previous years. I think I said down the bottom, we had a large TUPE out at the end of 2020-21, and it probably pulled down the number of people that would have left the organisation for resignation reasons. Okay.
Just to follow on that one, you would assume that the majority of resignations would be for other jobs and for moving on, but as there's a specific sort of category for career. So presumably this is when people are filling it in, they're either not giving a reason for their resignation, or they're giving a number of different reasons, which could also include career. So I guess the question is, am I right in my assumption that the majority of that 75% who would be resigning would be going on to other jobs or careers, but there are those complicated factors with presumably how we collect the data?
Yeah, highly likely that they're moving on to a further career and a further role.
Might be useful. I know we occasionally tweak the reports that we get, but to pick that up would be a sort of an interesting star to add underneath if we collect that data.
I'll have a dig into it further. Worst case scenario, Chair, is that we could have a dip sample of some of the people that have left and come back with some themes, or just make sure that the themes that we've just suggested there, that we've got some evidence behind them.
Thank you.
Okay,
Councillor Cobain.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, because I mean, you would imagine all the main themes are there, aren't they? You know, new job, poor health, something to do with the workplace, or something to do with the job. It's just we're just not capturing it, are we? In that that data there. On table 2.4, as you pointed out in the report, we are still not doing very well in terms of employing people from the Black minority ethnic community. I'm just wondering, I know, Helen, you mentioned something in the OD plan, I guess that's the organisational development plan, that might be addressing that. Can you just tell us what we are doing to try and increase the number of people from the Black minority ethnic community that we employ in order to, at the very least, hit the average for York?
For York, indeed. Yeah, I mean, that certainly would be our target. In all honesty, what we're doing at the moment, I don't think there's a great deal. There's some activity, but there's not a great deal of activity. And this is an area that I'm wanting to review as part of what I said, the OD plan at the moment. We also have a new post that's going to help us in terms of equalities. So hopefully we can do some targeted work in terms of what we could do. And it's strengthening and working with a lot of our community groups and making sure that our recruitment is accessible to a wide variety of community areas as well. So those figures, to be honest, are not unusual for York, for a council of this kind of size. I've seen similar kind of figures, but it's about doing more targeted work. And sometimes if you do targeted work, we still don't got those through. So it's about making sure that we're an attractive employer to all areas of our community as well. So again, yes, it's something that I do want to look into, and it's something that we can look at in the OD plan. Just being new to appointment, I'm sorry, I haven't got all of the background of it, but yes, it's certainly on my list.
Thanks, Helen. Part of the background is that 6 months ago, when we had the figures, or whenever it was, it might have been more than 6 months ago, I raised the same issue, and the same assurances are given. So it would be good to see some sort of meat on the bone, as it were, in terms of what we are actually doing to try and increase that figure, so that at least all of our community is represented within the council's employment. And for the disability table on 2.5, are there any sort of comparators as to how we are doing in terms of employing people with disabilities compared to other local authorities, or any other sort of averages that we can measure ourselves against?
The answer should be yes, actually, that we should be able to go and find something, and it probably should be there already. We get some information out of something called Poppy and Pansy, which help to break down disability by numbers at a city level. Also, the census experimental statistics are released to us very soon as an authority, which will be really useful to understanding the resident population. So I'm hoping that we'll get something that we can start using a bit more robustly from about the 1st of April. So I'll certainly make sure that section's updated for next time.
Great, thanks.
Thank you very much all. So we're noting the workforce profile, and obviously those questions that we had in terms of getting future updates to the committee. So thank you very much. So unless one of you waves madly now, I will assume that you're happy to note that. Item 6, as I mentioned at the start, has been deferred to the February meeting. So that will take us straight on to item 7, which is the committee's work plan, and over to Helen to introduce this.
Thank you. So the draft work plan there is all set out until we've got the next one obviously in February, but as we've already mentioned, we'll be deferring the discretions policy to come to the item in February. We are also reviewing and looking at a potentially a extraordinary meeting for early February to bring the People Directorate restructure as well will be coming to SMU. From the 21st of March, I'm hoping to bring you an update on OD as well as the regular items on redundancy, retirement and settlement agreements. And towards May, I would suggest that we would have the year-end details, either May or June year-end details for all of our workforce profile again. And just noting, obviously on the 17th of January, the work plan says at the minute, workforce demographics as of the 31st of March, and obviously that was the 30th of September as of 2021 rather than the 31st of March.
Thank you very much for that and those updates. So again, open it in case any questions from colleagues. Councillor Kilbane.
Thanks, Helen. In terms of the restructuring of the People Directorate, when did you say that was going to be coming to SMU, and when will that be notified to the public what the proposals are?
I'm just sorting that out this week, so hopefully it'll come to you as soon as possible. I can let you know that date offline as soon as I have that.
And is it 7 days notice, is it, for the public?
It would be, yes, it'll all be within line with that.
The expectation, I think, is to try and get a committee date very early February, with that notice then given. So that would be, we imagine, an in-person meeting.
It will be an in-person meeting, yes.
Thank you very much. So I can't see any other questions. Again, we're noting the work plan with those amendments. Thank you very much. So it takes us through to agenda item 8. I'm not aware of any urgent business. So then we'll go straight on to agenda items 9 and 10. But as said at the start, this is when we'd have to exclude the press and the public. So thank you to those watching and those that do watch Staffing Matters and Urgency Committee. But we'll now close the formal meeting.